Hi, Econ students. Welcome to Unit 4. We're on 4.1, the Introduction to Imperfect Competition. It is exactly what it sounds like. Before we talked about perfect competition, where goods are perfect substitutes, no barriers to entry, and we saw what that looked like in the short run and the long run for individual firms. Now we're going to be looking at three different market types where firms have some control or all control over the price. So they're price makers, not price takers, and they have varying levels of differentiation of their products and varying levels of barriers to entry and exit. And it changes the entire game. The graph looks different. The way that we work out the logic is all different. So we're going to start with the most extreme side of it, and that is the monopoly. And then we'll go back to monopolistic competition and then oligopoly. But all the way on the extreme, the most imperfect or the least competitive marketplace is, of course, the monopoly. Here are a couple of characteristics for you. A monopoly has one large firm. The firm is the market. So we take those two graphs from perfect competition, merge them together into one. I don't know what I did there with my hands. Merge them together into one graph. And so the demand curve is going to be for the marketplace is going to be in the firm's graph. So we're only going to have one graph there because the firm is the market. It's a unique product. There are no close substitutes. No one else can really compete with what they have to offer. As a result, the one company or firm dominates that marketplace. They're very high barriers to entry. Monopolies get really good at erecting barriers to entry that are hard to get over, right? They're just really good at it. For example, it is common for a monopolistic firm or even oligopolistic firms to sue new companies to say, hey, you're, whatever, you're violating our patent, for example. And the other company will be like, we're not really, but you have to pay money in court to say you're not. And sometimes that's enough to chase those markets away. Other times they'll acquire their competition. So because they're so big, they'll buy them up and absorb them into their marketplace, creating very, very high barriers to entry. Sometimes the high barrier is it's just difficult to produce the product that they're producing. Monopolies, like monopolistic competition and oligopolies, are price makers, not price takers. They have a differentiated product. They get to decide what price it is. As long as the market will bear it, meaning people are willing to pay that increased price, they get to make it. Okay, so how do you graph these characteristics? Well, it looks like this. I'm going to outline the logic here, and I'm going to show you in a chart, and then we're going to look at it on a graph. So here's the logic: perfect versus in competition. In a perfectly competitive market, firms are price takers. So demand is constant and it's equal to marginal revenue. In other words, Mr. Darp, horizontal curve. You know that, right? However, in an imperfect competition or imperfectly competitive firms are price makers, so they have downward sloping demand curves. If you're a price maker, then you have to react to the quantity demanded based on the prices that you change. If I change prices, which changes my quantity demanded, that creates a demand curve, right? That's what we're talking about. So demand curve, all of these imperfectly competitive firms are going to have a downward sloping demand curve instead of a horizontal one, because in order to sell more, a firm has to lower its price, right? We know that. When price goes down, people demand more, right? Quantity demanded goes up when price goes down. So if a firm wants to sell more product, they have to lower their price, which means that we have a downward sloping demand curve. However, that also changes marginal revenue, right? When I have to lower my price in order to sell more goods, marginal revenue is going to go down. And what we're going to find is that marginal revenue actually is not equal to demand like in perfect competition. Instead, marginal revenue is going to be lower than demand. Why? Because of the law of demand, right? We cannot price discriminate. When I lower the price for one, I have to lower the price for all. Let's take a look. Okay, so we have a firm here. In this firm, they set a price because they're a price maker of $11, and they sell zero product. They have zero total revenue, and of course, there's no marginal revenue there. What do you got to do if you're trying to sell something all other things constant? Well, you got to lower your price. So let's say they lower their price to $10. At $10, they sell one unit. You take that quantity demanded times your price, Your total revenue you're going to make if you sell that good at that price is $10. Your marginal revenue is you went from 0 to 10. Okay? Now, maybe I want to sell more than one. So I have to lower the price again to sell to the next person. But notice I cannot price discriminate. I can't sell the product for $10 to the first person and $9 for the second person. If I'm lowering the price for one, I have to lower the price for all. It's federal law. You have to do it. So now I'm lowering the price to $9, but now I'm lowering the price to $9 for both of those people. So now my total revenue is going to be 9 price times 2, my quantity. My total revenue would be 18. But if I'm tracking, I go from 10 to 18, my marginal revenue is going to be 8. Notice price went from 10 to 9, representing my demand curve. Marginal revenue went from 10 to 8. It's lowering at a greater rate. Let's check it out. If I want to sell 3 products, what do I have to do? Lower the price. When I lower the price, I can't lower the price for just that third person because I can't price discriminate. I have to sell it for 10. I can't sell it for 10 to the first, 9 to the second, 8 to the third. I have to sell it for $8 for everybody. This is where consumer surplus comes from, right? Somebody's willing to pay 10, but they don't have to. They pay 8. So $8 across the board for all 3 units. So what's my total revenue then? 8 times 3 is 24. My marginal revenue is going to be the change from 18 to 24. My marginal revenue is 6. Notice price went from 9 to 8, but marginal revenue went from 8 to 6. The gap between marginal revenue and demand is widening as a result. We keep on doing this. I want to lower the price to attract more people. I have to lower it to 7 because of the law of demand. Decrease price, increase in quantity demanded. I can't just lower for 7 for the fourth person because I can't price discriminate. I lower it to 7 for everybody, all 4 people, even though one's willing to pay 10, one's willing to pay 9, one's willing to pay 8, all of them get to pay 7. So I take that 7 times 4, my new total revenue is 28. My marginal revenue is going to be 24 to 28 or 4. I go down to 6, I go down to 5, I go down to 4, repeat that process. Notice the difference. Before, price and marginal revenue were equal, creating a horizontal demand curve. Here, price goes down in order for quantity demand to go up, so that's a demand curve. But below that is going to be our marginal revenue curve because notice, price goes down by 1 unit at each rate. Price goes from 10 to 8 to 6 to 4 to 2 to 0. It's decreasing by 2 every single time instead of by 1. In other words, marginal revenue is lower below the demand curve. It looks like this. Maybe some looks like chopsticks. Maybe somebody who's standing on stilts who's falling over. It looks like one of those perspective drawings to an angle, right? Like the road's going that way. Looks like a UFO beaming down to beam somebody up. I don't know, whatever you need to put in there to memorize that shape. Notice demand curve is here. Marginal revenue decreases at a greater rate because I cannot price discriminate. So marginal revenue starts at the same, because we look at this chart, they start at the same spot, 10 and 10. So it starts at the same, they connect, but then they go down and go their separate ways. Because in order to attract more people to the market, I have to lower the price. I can't just lower the price for that next person. I have to lower it for all. So marginal revenue decreases at a greater rate. Okay, last thing on 4.1 is elastic and inelastic range of the demand curve. Yes, it's back. So, friends, there's actually the total revenue test. You know this already, right? If price falls and total revenue increases, then demand is going to be elastic. If price falls and total revenue increases, then, if price falls and total revenue decreases, then price is going to be inelastic. Now, because we have the marginal revenue curve on here, we can actually determine this. As long as, I get a little marker here, as long as marginal revenue is positive, meaning it's above the x-axis, positive, right? That means to produce the next unit, I'm getting additional positive revenue, which means that my total revenue is going to be rising. So a decrease in price is going to result in an increase in total revenue because marginal revenue is positive. Decrease in price, increase in total revenue, go in different directions. That's elastic, right? So my elastic range, switch over here, is going to be this green area here. As soon as marginal revenue goes subterranean, as soon as it goes below, oops, there we go. As soon as it goes below the x-axis, now in order to produce the next unit, I lower the price, I'm actually getting negative marginal revenue, which means that to produce each additional item or to lower the price is going to result in a decrease in total revenue from that point forward. In other words, this area is going to be inelastic. Wherever marginal revenue is beyond or below the x-axis is going to be inelastic because a decrease in price will result in a decrease in total revenue. Remember, in order to move along this curve, on demand curve, we have to decrease the price to get an increase in quantity. That's how we're determining that. So decrease in price results in a decrease in total revenue. That is inelastic. Now that's the logic behind it, right? Marginal revenue is positive, elastic. Marginal revenue is negative, inelastic because of the total revenue test. But all you really need to know is as long as marginal revenue is above the curve, elastic, as soon as it hits below the curve, it's inelastic. That's the range. So this region of demand, green region, elastic, blue region, inelastic. And then at this point, at the intersection point, that's when it all changes. So if we're at a quantity of 8, for example, right there, let me get a little dot for you. When we are right here, we are unit elastic. That's the divide, okay? So monopoly will only ever produce in its elastic range because they want an increase in marginal revenue. They want total revenues to be going up. They will never lower their price enough that marginal revenue is negative and they're actually decreasing their profitability. Cool. All right, friends, that is it for 4.1. Check out your Khan Academy, and we'll come back for 4.2, where I'll actually graph the rest of the monopoly. Peace to you.